Hi, everybody. It's me, Emma Glasso, and I'm here with Todd Moonbounce, who is a good friend of mine and someone that I've been racing with for quite some time. I'm super excited to have him on Init Talks today. And I do have a bit of news. So I am going to be stepping out of my Init Talks role after this interview tonight because I might be back for a couple more things, but I have gotten a new job in motorsport that I will be able to announce soon, but it's a dream job for me. And unfortunately means I will not have time to continue doing Init Talks, but I've had such a great time throughout this experience, and I'm so happy that I get to do my final regularly scheduled show with Todd. Because, as I said, Todd and I have been racing in the same league for quite some time now. Todd, how long has it been?
I think I've come around to 1 year for myself. So I know you were there a little bit earlier. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I've been in our league since 2021 ish. So I guess almost 4 years now. That's crazy to think about. But yeah, so we race every Monday together in through all kinds of different series and stuff like that. So as Todd said, so he started a little bit after me, but it was really cool to see Todd join our league because for the longest time, I was definitely the newest driver in our league. And having someone also start relatively new to sim driving was a really cool experience to see how far I've come, but also to see how much someone new can help push you. Because I feel like Todd has definitely helped push me as a driver, and he also really helps push our league forward as well. So super thankful for him in our league and all this stuff. So Todd, I just wanted to ask you, how did you get into sim racing? Like, what made you start into this?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on. Glad to be part of the farewell tour, if you will. Congrats to everything on your end. Yeah, so sim racing for me was the Las Vegas race, F1 race 2 years ago now. Basically, I've grown up a fan of racing video games. Date myself all the way back to Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. Uh,
Nice.
but um, you know, Gran Turismo 4, I think, was the main one that I played. But they were still always video games to me. But then when got into F1 and the F1 video game had a free play weekend during the Las Vegas race 2 years ago, and so I picked it up. I have three brothers. We all picked it up. We've always gamed together, and so all weekend we raced, and then it was on sale. Picked up the full game and continued to play it on controller still.
I was gonna ask if it was
And
on controller or
yeah, it
not.
was still on controller, and it was a blast. It was so fun, and I just started to get that itch. I'm like, I want a wheel. I want to try this out, and did a lot of investigating and got a Logitech wheel. 29, I think I started with, and then swapped it right away. I got a 923 refurbished that worked out great, and just fell into it. It just it sucked me in, and but then right away I was like, F1's great, but I kind of want that Gran Turismo feel again, and found Assetto Corsa, and just happened to luck out and see a Reddit post from our league. Said, hey, a new league is starting. Join us if you want. And that's really kind of like what I would say is my where my start in sim racing was joining SBR and the league, and diving into that, not really knowing what I was getting into, and just kind of
Yeah.
this whole new world. Yeah.
So here's a question for you because I dealt with this when I first joined. How was learning Assetto Corsa for the first time coming into sim racing? Because it intimidated me a ton when I first started. So I'm curious how it was for you.
Yeah, so I think like before the league, I don't know if I found, content managers. So those out there familiar with the Settle Course likely know what content manager is when we talk about that. But I think I started before that. So, it wasn't too bad because it was, and I'll reference Gran Turismo. It was close to that in some regard. And then it was like, well, if you want to be in the league, you got to have content manager and doing all that stuff. And that was like, all right, what am I working with here? But then it came along, so that kind of side of it was fine. But then getting into the actual racing and whatnot, I think went smooth enough.
What was your first race in series? I don't remember. What was it?
I think it was like the Club Cup. So we had the multi-class of the Mazdas, the Toyotas, and
Oh.
the BMWs, E86 or something like that.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. Cause yeah,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to think of what livery. That was the art car livery. That was
Oh
fun.
yeah, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
and
that's
I
an
had,
interesting one.
yeah, it was probably the perfect series for me to join because it was, I drove the MX-5. I think it was relatively easier car to deal with, especially like setup wise. Like I didn't have to
Yeah.
deal with setups too much. I mean, there was, um, thinking about, I don't know what was the season before, but the season after was Super GT, and that was like night and day different from
Yeah.
that. And it was, but I
That was
was
my
into it.
first season. My first season was GT 500s.
Yeah, yeah, like that. I don't know if it would have scared me away, but it would have been a very different experience. Meeting all these new people and just trying to like, I was so nervous. Like, I'm brand new to this. I don't know where I stand skill wise. Like, I don't want to be in the way. I don't want to ruin other people's fun here because I'm trying to learn. And, luckily that was anything but the experience. I think even where my skill level was. And still is to this day, the group is super welcoming, and that's really helped, me continue to grow as a sim racer.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And we'll touch on this a little bit later on in the show, but I always talk about how our league really makes it, and we have a couple of them in chat, including Tree, who my first race, Tree was in line to win it, and I took him out in last place, and he was laughing at me. So sorry, Tree. But hey, we're all still friends, so it works out. And that's the beauty of the community of sim racing is you can have, these horrible things happen, but you're all friends at the end of the day because you need each other, whether it's to push each other or to race together every week. Because if you think about what we do in real life, getting 10 people together in the same room to do anything is difficult enough, let alone getting 10 people across North America and beyond in our league to all
Yeah,
come together on Monday nights is super hard. So,
international. Yeah,
yeah, we internet.
absolutely. It's super great. Everyone is super awesome. I think, there's lots of competitiveness, but in a very healthy way.
I agree.
And, as you said, I think when you mentioned kind of in the intro, when I started to get a feel for the other drivers, I noticed like, all right, Emma and I are, we seem to be a little bit close on pace. Like, this was kind of like, all right, she's kind of my rival, whether she knows it or not. And it was kind of that target, like, all right, definitely, want to try and keep pace with her and
Yeah.
and
And
and then,
likewise, I
go
was
from
like,
there.
man, I can't let the new guy catch me. So it was a
Yeah.
lot of like putting extra time in the seat to try to get everything perfect so we could really have a race.
Yeah.
But I do remember it was you and me and Suzuka, and it must have been GT 500s or something. And I totally adored you.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I remember that. The other
It was
thing
so
is I
bad.
had a setting on that didn't let my headlights work as well as they should because that race transitioned from day to night,
Right. Yeah.
and my headlights were basically useless. And that very last like chicane there, whatever, is where it happened because it's after that straight, real hard braking zone, and I mean I couldn't see anything, and so it was just like, whatever is what it is. But yeah,
Yeah, it was totally. I watched the replay because at first I was like, "Man, what the heck happened there?" Then I watched the replay and it was 100% me. I was just like, "Oh, I can outbreak him. Definitely couldn't outbreak you," and just hit. Right. But that's the cool thing. So, for those who are watching who don't have a league or something, our league is kind of different. Well, at least compared to other leagues that I have attempted to find in the past. All of us are all talking throughout the race, usually within reason. We always stay behind and talk after the race and do replays and stuff. And I really think that that really helps build our community because that's where we're talking, we're getting to know each other week after week. We're talking about things, and it really makes the community that much stronger. And I have tried to find other leagues before, and SBR is still the league for me that everyone's there and really consistent. And speaking of, yes, Tree, competitive casual. But speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming race that Init is hosting, which is for National Women's Day or International Women's Day. Sorry. So we're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about the cars that we're driving and the track because you have experience driving these cars and I don't, so I think you'd be the better person to talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce the race, and then yeah, I'll definitely talk on my experience there.
Yeah, so if you can help me out for 1 second. So we're at Charlotte, which is an oval,
Yep.
and we're in the mini stock. And so can you explain a little bit about what those cars even are? Because when I first heard that, I was like, what car is that? Like, or when I first joined iRacing, I should say, like, what how would you describe mini stock cars?
It is a smaller version of the street stock. So you got to know what a street stock is to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I said, as I was telling Emma in the pre-show, as we were kind of catching up, that I'm definitely not a gearhead. Cars are not something I've ever had a huge interest in. Um, especially at a mechanical level or things. So, yeah, to me, it's a smaller version of the street stock car, an oval car that you go to your local short track and watch them, whip around the oval. Super good time. But they're like, as far as how they drive, they're a lot of fun. I like them more than the street stock. The street stocks, they just feel like a little bit more of a boat to me. Especially on a larger oval like Charlotte. And it's a lot faster speeds, of course. Not like the short tracks where you're slowing down a little bit to hit those turns and go around the track. But this the minis, just to me, they just feel like they glide a little bit better than the street stocks.
Would you
And
say they're like a beginner friendly car? So I guess I should back up a little bit. For the International Women's Day event, so it's a women's only race that Any Esports is hosting and through screen. Yeah, so it's going to be all women on track, which is really cool because women in sim racing, as Init kind of talks about all the time through Screen to Speed and other events, it's something that you don't see a ton of women on iRacing. We're trying to change that, but this will be a women's only event to come try out the mini stock car at Charlotte. So someone might be picking up iRacing for the first time because all of the content that we're using is free. So what, in your opinion, as someone starting out, is this a good car to start with, a good track to try to learn to jump into this?
I don't know if jumping into Charlotte with the mini stock, but I mean, at the same time, dive in. I think like a lot of the free content, quote unquote free content, is
Yeah.
is very good. It's well rounded across the board. There's a little bit of something for everyone, and so on the oval side of things, yeah, mini stocks or street stocks I think are great. I'll just preface this that it's very much my opinion, but I think I would choose the minis over the regulars if you were just jumping in. But I think they both would offer their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to your opinion because oval racing is not my forte. I have a lot of respect for people who do race ovals because I remember back in my Gran Turismo days on PlayStation with controller, they had the challenge where you had to go from last to first, probably at Daytona, I don't even remember. And I was like, oh, this would be so easy. You're just turning left. And it was so difficult for me. I was just dying. And so now I've kind of like kept that trauma with me as I'm going into iRacing. But it's going to be a really cool event this weekend. It will be streamed, so everyone keep a lookout for that. And it's going to be a great way to support women in sim racing and just, furthering sim racing in general.
Yeah,
So, oh, go for it. Yeah.
as I say, yeah, that's awesome. The full spread of female drivers will be super cool to see, and I have found ovals are super fun. I think anyone, if you haven't got into it or like I'm not going to get into it, like try it. I was
That's what everyone
never,
says. They just say try
yeah,
it.
and then like is just this is actually super fun. It's actually a blast. But I've also found like I really enjoy watching sim. I think oval sim racing I might prefer a little bit more to watch online, like streams.
Interesting.
I found some good ones where there's one channel that a guy that he actually calls races IRL. So he's just got this awesome like broadcast voice, and he's really good at the commentary. But it's super enjoyable, and I think part of it is because obviously you can see a larger portion of the track at one time. You can see all the cars on like a street track or a road course. You have to jump around if the pack spreads out so much. But yeah, oval is super fun to watch.
Yeah, that's a great point because sometimes it kind of what you're saying. When you're on a road course, it can be difficult to watch the race as a spectator if you're not quite ready to jump in the cockpit. Which we need people to watch too, because it's just spreading esports around. If it's something that people enjoy watching, and something like an oval can be fun to watch, that's totally cool to experience it that way as well. I mean, actually, Max Verstappen was just talking about that on his Redline stream, how he actually enjoys watching races almost as much as driving. And I think that if you've never tried racing before, and you go on and try your hand at a couple laps, not only do you have more respect for the drivers in real life, but also the sim drivers. And then when you watch them really compete, you know exactly all the things that they've had to do to get there. And like I said, I don't do ovals, but when I watch an oval race, it's really fascinating to see what they're doing. And there's so much nuance to it that I don't quite understand, but it could be a really cool event to watch. So everyone, it's on March 8th. You can find more information on the Init sites and socials. They'll have more about it there. It's going to take place on the 8th, as I said, all women's grid. So it is going to be a really fun time. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be great. So let's
Yeah,
move
look
on
forward
a
to it.
little bit to kind of your sim racing in general. We talked a little bit about our league, but if someone said, like, what do you do when you sim race? How would you answer that question? Like, what are you racing right now, I guess?
Yeah, leagues really dictate that. We only have so much, time in the week, and when I first started, especially when I first started, because I was still, getting that experience built up. It was Monday we have a race, so it's kind of leading up to Monday, practice for that race,
Yep.
have the race Monday, and then sometimes Monday night after the race, but definitely the next day, practicing for the next week. I mean, it was like right into it.
That was
That
me
was my
too.
focus.
Yeah.
And, going and going. And that was how it was for a while. And then, I've spread out. I also tried a couple other leagues with um, Assetto Corsa, and just kind of didn't really work out. Yeah, and then iRacing, I think this past August I joined iRacing, so I've kind of got sucked into that. Do really enjoy that. Really enjoy that it offers basically, you can jump in and race with other live people almost
Yeah.
any time of the day.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing about it too.
Yeah. So, again, it's still that balance of time. Like even right now, like I've got spreadsheets for next, iRacing season, and looking at like, all right, what do I want to focus on, and
We
trying
love
to
that. We
balance,
love the
yeah,
spreadsheets.
all the time, and what tracks do I own, and stuff like that. So yeah, so whatever we're doing in SBR is kind of my main focus. And then iRacing next season for sure, GT4 is going to be a big focus for me. I really want to try and master that car as much as possible.
Yeah.
I
I've
have
always
the
heard.
86 is probably my favorites.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I know that's one of yours too.
Definitely.
But yeah, looking forward to the
Yeah.
GT4.
I've always heard from my friends who do esports professionally and stuff like that, that for iRacing specifically, the best way you can get better the fastest is to specialize in a specific car. So if you just got iRacing and you're wondering where you should start, um, people will tell you the MX5s just because that's the kind of rookie league that everyone starts with. But for me, it was the 86. The Toyota GR86 was definitely my car, and you really do notice a difference. So if you haven't done sim racing before, uh, when you learn the car itself, every track becomes easier because there's only so many slow corners, medium speed corners, high speed corners, and once you know exactly what that car is going to do, it's way easier. So I think for you, Todd, jumping into the GT4s will be a great way to, like you said, master the car and figure everything out, because that's what the professionals are doing. They're focusing on one car, one series even, and that's just the best way to do it, because then you get to focus on the other things like your driving technique and all that. Once you have the car down, everything's easier, or so they say. I don't
Yeah.
know. I definitely haven't mastered the GR86, but it's hard. And so I guess we could back up to that a little bit. So you talk about how you only have a certain amount of time in the sim rig, and I think a lot of us are kind of the same. What do you do outside of sim racing? Maybe something just your job in general, but have you noticed anything in the outside world, so to speak, coming into your sim racing journey?
Yeah, definitely. I am a creative. I've been a creative all my life. Professionally, I'm a graphic designer. I'm a musician. I play guitar. I've been doing that since forever. So always have had a very creative side, and yeah, really do try to bring that stuff into new hobbies that I pick up here and there. I think the last big thing that I was doing was tabletop gaming, and really got into streaming actual plays and really enjoyed the production of that. So production of the stream and designing, the overlay graphics and all that stuff. It was a way for me to scratch that creative itch that my professional life wasn't doing. I'm doing design work professionally, but it's stuff for a company. It's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'll do it because obviously I get paid for it, and that's very welcomed. But you still sometimes want to paint with your own set of colors, if you will. And
Nice.
so with sim racing, yeah, like when I first joined, again, kind of going back to like how did you dive into Assetto Corsa, and then it was like, all right, we're doing custom liveries here. And I remember go back to Need for Speed Underground, and that was like, I loved the racing, but designing the cars was potentially my other favorite part,
Yeah.
making them look cool.
Same here.
So, designing liveries in Assetto Corsa for the league was just, super cool. And I remember like my first one was totally like, I'm literally just figuring this out. Like,
Oh
you
yeah,
would not know
for
that
sure.
I'm a professional graphic designer by this like just solid color shapes on here. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is so cool. And then like we go to the league and like everyone's just like these amazing,
Yeah. That's
works
the
of
cool
art
thing
and stuff.
also about our league. So our league has a livery contest every season, most seasons, I should say. And it's always so cool to see people what they bring to the table. They either have friends from other leagues helping them out making livery, or like you and I make our own liveries, and we all have our own different style. And it's really cool to see the same people bring different ideas. Like we have a team every time that is advocating for a certain cause, so their livery is about a certain cause. So it's always interesting to see which one they're going to pick. Mine are just all over the place, but the kind of common vein with them is hand drawn liveries that I draw in, on my iPad and stuff like that. And yours are just so cool. Like when we had our GR86 race, your liveries, when we were at Okayama, were super cool with the, was that the Pizza Hut one? That's what I'm thinking of, right?
Uh,
Or was it
the
Domino's?
pizza one was for the multi-class one we did
Okay. What was
with
your GR,
SBR.
or was
Yeah.
the Barbie one your
So
GR86?
yeah, and that one was from Trading Pains. That was not mine.
Okay, fair.
I borrowed that one. But then I currently my 86 in iRacing is the crash test dummy car.
Yes,
I've got that one.
that
So,
one's super
which I really
cool.
love. I did make that one. It's so a lot of mine are kind of like nods to just things in the past that are so crash test dummy toys. The classic pizza, the team pizza that we did. Um, Radio Shack. So we did the F4 was the last series we did. So I
Right.
did some Radio Shack, throwing back to anyone that knows or remembers that. And um, yeah, and for me it's like I pick a theme and then it's all right, how do I make this like if this was a legit livery sponsor type thing, that's kind of my direction is it's not just slapping on the logo because you can, it's then working with the rest of the car and the branding of the brand, the colors and all that, and make it look like a actual livery, actual sponsorship. So yeah, super
Yeah.
fun.
I think that's the really cool thing about sim racing is you have all those liberties. You can, I mean, you could put any sponsor you want on there, whether it's real or not, and you get the choice to design a livery based off that. Especially you're doing stuff in your profession that translates directly to it. And so you put together like such thoughtful designs that are really cool. Mine are just like random pictures that I put on there, but it's still really fun and I think that you learn a lot, even though kind of like you said you do this as your job full time, but it definitely is different to use a set of Corsa technology to make a livery and also to do trading paints for iRacing. So that's super
Yeah.
cool and something that um I think really makes racing fun in general because well, like I was design my very first season, we talked about that before, and I think I've talked about this almost every episode, but it was GT 500s, and I made a Bulbasaur livery that just looked like a
Yeah.
Bulbasaur, and that livery is still like a my claim to fame livery, even though I came in last place every single race that season. That's what it's all about. Is like I was still having fun because I got to contribute what I could contribute to my car. And so people who come in and think that sim racing has to be, oh, you got to be the best, you got to be, the fastest person ever. There's so much more to it than that. And you can find a lot of enjoyment in as you're learning, which we'll talk about next,
Yeah.
but um there's a ton you can do with it. So speaking of learning, you and I talk a lot about how, because we're kind of rivals, so to speak. Like, how are you getting faster? What's working for you? So talk a little bit about your journey and how you've learned to be faster and what helps and what hasn't helped you.
Yeah. Yeah. That has been definitely journey is a great word for that. I think lap times are a fantastic quantitative measure for your progress, right? But I don't think it's always a very good one because it's something easy to chase, but there's a lot of other elements to, you know, to sim racing that are very important. And so it's trying to figure out what those little things are along the way, your braking technique, your throttle technique, your steering technique, all these little things, your racecraft. Um, those things are going to add up to those faster lap times. And I think that's like, you know, for me at least, it wasn't super easy to figure out. And I'm still figuring that out. But yeah, it's just, going along the way and working on those little things. I think like for me, as a musician, played guitar, I understand the value in coaching and lessons and things like that. So I kind of got to a point, especially being in the league. Going back to that whole lap time thing is like, I was definitely at the bottom of the league when I kind of came in, and really had to recognize that a lot of these others that were in the group have been doing it for a very long time. I mean, like,
Yes.
I think like tens of years potentially, some of these guys, and like I've been doing it for at the time, like months, if that. And you really have to kind of gut check yourself and say, hey, slow down, like you're just starting. Um, but yeah, so eventually, like I got to a point where I knew this was something that I really enjoyed and wanted to, continue at and get better at. So I started looking into coaching and some things like that, and did some lessons, some coaching here and there, and that was super helpful and kind of helped those things I talked about. Like, it's not just you're not just going after lap times. You need to work on the trail braking. You need to do this and this. It's as simple as stop and watch a replay of your lap. Like that is
Yeah, that's so
so
valuable.
ridiculously valuable. Um, and something I still don't do as much as I should, but all these little things there, it's just super helpful towards that growth. So yeah, then just really being intentional, and I think also, you and I have had a lot of those conversations, as you said, that helps too. Get somebody else, that you can, go along with and kind of push each other, but also, work with each other too,
Yeah.
along the way.
Like, and so another thing to kind of, I know we keep bringing it back to our league, but one thing that's cool about our league is you're paired up with somebody, whether you want to be or not. You're in a team. They either pick a team for you or you pick your team. So my teammate, we've been on the same team since I started in the league, and he's been my rival too because he's always faster than me every single time. So I'm just trying to catch him, and we share setups. We're not. Our league is very open about sharing setups and stuff, but I know the more competitive you get, the less casual you get, the more that's not really a thing.
Right.
But we're always sharing setups, talking to each other, figuring things out together, and so it's great to have that teammate aspect of it too, because there's teams in our league that really go in all in on different pit stop strategies and all this stuff, and so it really makes it fun and engaging, and having that teammate there to push you as a rival, but also trying to get championship points, because that's a big thing about any community. You have to get people to be there every single week, and something I think our league is really good at is you want to be there. At least I want to be there for my teammate, even if I don't feel like racing that night. Like, there's been a lot of times where I was like, man, I don't know if I really want to race. And then I'm like, well, I really don't want our team to lose the championship because I just didn't feel like showing up. So I'd get in the rig and then we'd have a fun time anyway. And I think that's just another thing that makes sim racing so valuable. And what you're saying about watching laps back, I think it's also really important to save your laps and then go back in a month, 6 months, a year and watch your lap again. And you'll be like, who is this person driving this
Yeah.
car? Because I remember when I first started, I don't even remember what track it was, but I went back and I think it was Watkins. I watched that lap back later and I was like, where did I think I was on track? Because I wasn't using all the track at all. I was just totally losing time there. And the more you grow in sim racing, the more you learn to recognize those things, and kind of, see how you've improved. Because the lap time is a good indicator, but like you said, there's a lot more to it than that. The different braking things you can do, the different, even steering angle, all that kind of stuff. And it can be really helpful to have a coach just to point those things out to you. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
resources online too that you and I have dove into. And did you find this video helpful? Did you find this class helpful? Stuff like that. So
Yeah, and yeah, there's definitely lots of good free resources out there. And I think it could be a little bit overwhelming too, because everyone has their own take on this stuff, and so, but I think you can get pretty far with that stuff, and I think like, just trying to find a league in general is definitely going to help out. I'd imagine most leagues are going to be really helpful, from a community standpoint. I remember, I think like race one, got in an incident, was we were watching the replays, like, hey guys, did I do something wrong here? And it was just, it wasn't really me. It was just kind of, a crowded field at the corner. But yeah, I think everyone's willing to, be helpful in that regard, and help each other grow, because I think at the end of the day, we all want good close racing, right? Like, it's no fun if the entire field is spread out and we're just lapping, right? We want to race with each other. And as I have grown in my skill level and gotten closer to the pack, the fun like has skyrocketed. It's so much more fun, and so it's all, we all want that. We want everyone to, enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, you're also not gonna really want to come out and, play every week. So
yeah, for sure. And I'll say for the different screen to speed events that I've been in, we've had a lot of really close racing, and it's really cool because it seems like there's a bunch of separate little packs. And in our league, I'm used to being like, like we said, there's guys who've been racing for 10 years, and I definitely have not. So being able to race in the front of the pack with people who, we have people in the different screen to speed events that have also been on iRacing for 10 years, that, you're fighting against all these people with all this wealth of experience. And I also think something we haven't really touched on, but we've mentioned, is when you're racing with people, you go to a rookie race in iRacing and everyone's a rookie, most people, it's a completely different kind of race than when you know exactly how people are going to race and you can actually do that close racing. Because even though they're way faster than you learn a lot from people who are, faster but maybe slower today because they missed their pit stop or something bad happened. And you kind of see how close they're willing to play it with you, and you build trust with each other on track. So racing the same people every week is also extremely valuable for that too. But we can kind of get into another thing that you and I have also done. So sim racing can be useful for learning other things as well. And one of those being language learning, of all things. So you and I are both studying Italian, and I mean, I've done the thing where I changed my race engineer on iRacing to Italian, and it's a really interesting. It almost feels like immersion, at least it did for me. So I think you've done the same thing as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about your language learning experience through sim racing?
yeah, absolutely. So I think like I've always wanted to learn a language. I did Spanish back in high school. It never really stuck. And then just for some reason, recently, I think kind of talking to you, before or after one of the races, it's like, you know what, actually, I think I'm gonna, try and give it a shot again. And Italian's always been one that I've had an interest in. so I just, dove in, doing the Duolingo route and stuff like that, and other things. And my wife is learning along with me, which is great. But yeah, I think like, the immersion side of it, from a learning standpoint, is very helpful. And with Crew Chief, one of the other, Crew Chief programs that you can get for a set of course and whatnot. There was an Italian version out there, but I think like the audio quality wasn't great, so it was a little distracting. And then I don't know why. I think I was I was looking at the Crew Chief settings in iRacing one day, and I noticed I had different options, and I don't know why I thought this, but at the time I was like, oh, this is an Italian accent. English speaking but and I don't know why like I thought that. So I turned it on, and then the thing is, it doesn't change right away. You actually have to close out and come back in. So it didn't change. I'm like, all right, whatever, carried on. Next time, load up the sim, and then it's full on Italian, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're in this. But it's like, no, this is fine. And so, the thing with with the crew chief to help you is it's very repetitive. When you're driving around,
you're right.
Macchina e la destra, cars to the right, or sinistra to the left, and you hear that stuff over and over again, and it just helps you learn, those phrases and things. I actually dug into the phrase list in the back end. It's massive. It's like thousands and thousands of lines, which is very cool. But numbers is another thing, because he's always shouting out lap times. So yeah, there's a lot of things there.
Well, I
it's
have
just one little thing.
So I jumped into an actual race, and like you said, I originally had an English speaking race engineer, and then when I restarted my iRacing, I had changed it to Italian and forgot. Jumped into, I think it was a PCC race, and all of a sudden, like, and my Italian's pretty good, but my racing Italian is not great. And so I'm driving, and I had a spotter for the race, English speaking spotter, and I was like, man, he's really insistent about this one thing. And my spotter was like, I think he's saying that you're out of fuel. Like, I don't know much Italian, but I remember hearing that. And I was like, really? You think so? Sure enough, ran out of fuel.
Oh, man.
But I think that's good because, people always say when you go to a foreign country and you have to learn the language, that's the best way to learn it, or to take a class in that language. And when you're racing and you actually need to understand what they're saying to understand what's going to happen to your car, kind of simulates that as well. I'm not going to say that I'm fluent in Italian at all, but I am working on it. And when you're able to understand what they're saying, kind of what you're saying, like cars to the right, cars to the left, the times and all that stuff, you pick up more than you realize. So yeah, definitely have been there with accidental things. So
yeah, super cool. But there's a handful of languages on there. So, I forget what, I don't know which all are on there, but I know there's a handful. So, one little extra thing out there for that, that sim racing could offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely a unique one that, because I originally thought about it because I used to, when I wanted to learn Italian, Assassin's Creed 2 was the game. So that was all Renaissance Italy. So I changed my game audio to Italian to try to learn it, which is kind of the same, but not really, because you could figure it out even without understanding the words. But in racing, when they're telling you you're out of fuel and you don't understand, it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, you need to learn. I have not run into that yet, but that's definitely crossed my mind of like, I don't know enough on that stuff yet. I'm learning the flags. So, Bandiera Bianca is white flag. Like, I know that stuff. I'm learning that. And then obviously car to the left or right, or if it's oval, inside, outside, learning a lot of that stuff that you hear a lot. But yeah, if there's damage, I get the gist, and a lot of it's context, like, oh, I just was in a big wreck. I know he's telling me my car is screwed up, but I don't know specifically. So, but yeah, it's super little, little extra thing there that it offers.
So, becoming fluent in Italian is a goal for you, of course, but in sim racing specifically, what's the goal that you have there, and how are you working toward it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's like a hard goal. It's just like continuously improving. I think, in being more competitive is definitely the goal. And that's kind of like with playing guitar. I will never master the guitar. There there's just way too many genres, styles, etc. Um, you know, I've been playing for a long time. I feel like I'm a very skilled player, but I know there's still so much more out there. Because like you've got that learning curve that shoots up and then it tapers off. It still can grow,
Yeah.
but it's going to taper off. And you know, I don't know if I'm hitting that taper yet, but I've definitely seen a lot of growth, and still want to keep pushing that. I rating, I go back and forth every time of like worrying about that and not worrying about that, because it kind of is a measure, but I don't know if it's an amazing measure of your skill level because there's
Right.
so many other factors.
Yeah, definitely.
I think like that's why the league, like you were talking about the consistency with the league, is that I know where a lot of these other guys are at, and not like I think a lot of them, some of them may be hitting that plateau. Like there's only so much better you can get. I'm sure there are still ways to improve, but you know, eventually it's the gains are going to be so small
Yeah.
that I'll have more opportunity to
And
catch up. And
I
yeah.
also feel like in our league, you can, or in a league in general, like iRacing, you can beat a guy who's a 4K I rating or something, which is feels really good if you're a 2K I rating. But in our league, when you had the blood, sweat, and tears going into a race and you beat the guy who's usually mid pack or something, and you can just take that one victory, and it's like so cool. And there's just nothing that kind of beats that when you've been fighting against the same person for a long time. And like you
Mhm.
said, it is a measure of skill because you know how good these people are, and it can help you kind of see, I don't know, how good you are in the real world, so to speak. Because I feel like the guys who are really good in our league are also really good in every other sim. So if you ever like beat them, it's like, man, maybe I'm getting kind of good at this. Because we have people in our league who we had a top three finalist for APAC for the Ferrari Esports Series in our league. And he races all the time, Thomas Wilson. We have guys who have done, they do wheel track stuff and all that stuff. So never assume that your league is just, people who sit at their computer all the time because most of us have car experience somewhere, and you really never know who you're going to find that has that real life experience that you're also kind of competing against. Because again, sim racing, I mean, I can speak for myself having driven sports cars around track. It does teach you how to drive the car better.
Mhm.
So, oh yeah, and Tree just brought up Shane. He was a driver. I think he was before your time, Todd, but Shane did the TCR. It was TCR World Challenge, I believe, and he got flown to the Netherlands to race that car in Assetto Corsa.
Awesome.
And he's a phenomenal driver as well. So it, that's the cool thing. Is, we never would have met each other except through our league, and we have people racing in Australia and Europe and Canada, and we
Mhm.
can all race together every Monday night and compete. So that
Yeah,
community is
internet
such a big
friends are
part.
the best.
They
I
are.
like it's I have a little bit of social anxiety. Definitely kind of a I forget which way it goes, but like extroverted introvert, I think it is.
Yeah.
I can be extroverted, but definitely introverted is my home base. But anyway, coming into this group of new people that I don't know, especially where, as I said before, like I don't want to be screwing up their fun, their races because I'm new. Um, but super welcoming. And then as you just like start to learn about each other and what everyone does, and it's just super cool. Like the experiences that everyone has, and like your journey and your career and whatnot is just super awesome. And it's just really neat to learn about that beyond just the racing that we do once a week. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so let's see. Something that I feel like it's interesting that you say that you don't feel like you're an extrovert, you're kind of an extrovert introvert, because you've been so good at creating things in our league and really kind of holding the banner, so to speak, to find other ways for us to race with each other. An example of that is our league primarily races in Assetto Corsa, but we also now do iRacing kind of fun races every week that you primarily host. what made you decide to kind of dive more into the administrative part? And do you find that enjoyable? It seems like you do because you're really good at hosting it, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of four, so I'm the oldest. So I think you know, for our oldest children out there, I think you understand that I've always kind of been one to organize and take care of and things like that. So I think that's a role that I kind of slip into, and it's also, admittedly, maybe a little selfishness that like I'm putting together something to fuel the social needs that I have, right? Like I want to, race together another night of the week, and I'm happy to put that together, and it's a good time. So, yeah, just another thing to put together, and happy to do so.
What's the learning curve been for that part of it? Because I have tried to host stuff before on iRacing, and I actually called you to help me figure it out because it's really overwhelming. But I think it's something that people like. One thing that's great about our league and great about all these different esports competitions is the administrative side of it is a huge piece of the puzzle, and you want to be able to have these things where are we going to have a server that's up every single time we're racing, all this stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how you had to learn all that stuff and how it went
Yeah,
for you?
yeah. I think like there just became more chatter about iRacing in general within the group, and and then especially when I got into it, it's like, all right, there's a good handful of people here. Let's see if there's some interest for having some races. And so my first hosting attempt was actually for a birthday race I did.
Very
Kind of
cool.
circling back to the oval racing, the free trucks, the Legacy Craftsman truck at Charlotte. I was like, this is a blast. This is what I want to do. I want to do this truck race. So I was like, all right, this is going to be, we're going to gauge, one, I wanted to just put the event on, but then two, it was like to gauge the interest within the group to see if we had enough, people and interest to maybe do this regularly. Because of course we were always going to have Mondays on Assetto Corsa, and that was going to, kind of stick. Um, so I think we actually did a race beforehand though, before the truck race, as an earlier test, and one of the other members had kind of set that one up. But yeah, so like as far as like the actual nuts and bolts of that, it's still been a learning process. We're constantly, me and the other Vegeta, the other uh, individual that generally hosts as well. We kind of trade back and forth. We're constantly like talking about setting stuff up and like, all right, how do we do it this week? How do we do it that week? This setting, that setting. We were talking before coming on here about the caution fiasco we had at last night because there's just something with the track we think, and managing all that. So I think like once you get one or two under your belt, though, it's pretty straightforward. Luckily, iRacing makes it very easy. It's just kind of like a checkbox. You go down the list, and you do that, and that's pretty good. I think like the one thing I learned like in the truck race I did, I think I had the temperature way too hot, so the track was super hot,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I'm like I've ran this race a ton of times. Why am I out of control? And it's just a lesson learned that okay, pay attention to your temperatures and weather and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes into driving as well because if you do it from the hosting side and all of a sudden the track temperature is 150 degrees and you can't drive, you're like, oh, and then when you notice something later when you're actually driving, like, oh, the temperatures are hotter, that's how it's going to affect the car. Like we did when we did our mini IMSA series, I think it was two seasons ago. We had Daytona, which is
Yeah.
typically a pretty cold race, and if you were practicing in normal Florida sunny weather in the summertime and then you went to Daytona for our race on the server, it was a very different time for you. Ask me how I know. But it's just stuff like that where you can learn through that. And I always tell people, a lot of people who do sim racing, people love the driving and whatever. But if you're somebody who enjoys kind of the spreadsheets and the admin aspects of it, which I mean, I kind of enjoy that kind of stuff too, even for my own driving. I have my own spreadsheets for times and stuff like that. But if that's something that interests you, don't be afraid to join a league or create your own league, honestly, and
Yeah.
see how admin stuff works and do that because they're like anything from livery design to administrative stuff. There's so much that's needed to build a community, and like that's what we're building with Init too, is having a bunch of women and allies coming together to host these races, to do all these things, and there's all kinds of people needed to do that. And it really takes a village. I mean, I think our league is it's a perfect example of that too. It's we have a lot of people who dedicate a lot of time to this, and the more you get into the behind the scenes, you realize just how much time those people are putting into it, and we all do it for the love of the esport, so to speak, and the real thing. So I don't know, I just
Yeah,
love
there's
it.
yeah, there was a lot of times where, you know, as I said, I want to stretch my creative wings, and so I'd reach out to the admins, Jedi or Vegeta, say, hey, this or that, and like they're so on top of that more than I would have realized, and like,
Yeah,
man, you guys are awesome. Like the stuff you're doing is amazing, and that's so cool to see, and because like I'm just kind of going into it blind, and you got to ask those questions to know, but. Yeah, it's just super cool to see, as you said, all the work that goes into it and what it takes to kind of keep that stuff. And that was, kind of going back to like some other leagues. I think like that's the other thing too is their stuff it just runs so well and it's so organized. There's some others that I had checked out that was just, and I tried to introduce, some of the concepts, and it was just like, no, they didn't want that. We're just this kind of free for all. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna go back to
yeah, it's a
my
hard
beloved
balance.
SBR. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's something. If you have to, what you want out of a league is you want everyone to show up all the time. You want everyone to be motivated. You want everyone to be competitive, clean racing, stuff like that. And you really have to present the league that way and maintain the league that way. And it's way harder. It's like anything else. It's just like driving. Like you have to learn how to handle a server, not just a server on a set of courses, but like a Discord server or something, like, and have communication between the team, because it is a team effort. So there's just all kinds of things to sim racing, just like any kind of esport in general, or tabletop games, stuff like that, where you're getting people together all the time. Like there's a lot of commitment involved, and there just has to be mutual respect between the drivers and the admins. And I think another thing that's cool is our league is very good at, when problems arise or something, it's all dealt with in a very professional way, and we all know exactly what's going to happen if something bad happens or something, and everyone's just so cool. So I could talk about our
Yeah.
league forever, but and it's cool to see other leagues sprouting, just in esports in general, because sim racing is expanding so much in what they're doing, including stuff like screen to speed, and having these events where you're getting people to show up every time, and that's a huge thing in itself. Even if you're only getting 5 to 10 people to show up every single race, like that's 5 to 10 people around the world that are dedicating their evening to this.
Yeah.
So it's just a cool thing. I don't know. I could talk about it forever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, so yeah, let's wrap it up here because we are getting close to time. But I just kind of wanted to open the floor to you a little bit. What do you see the future of sim racing looking like? Maybe for you, maybe for anyone. And what would you say to someone who's thinking about starting driving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I won't talk on this too much, but this season with SBR, I'm not driving actually. It's just a car I didn't want to drive. But something that I've wanted to do for a while now is kind of broadcast the race. And this was a shorter season, so it's like this is the perfect opportunity. I'm gonna take a break from driving, and I'm gonna produce a broadcast. I'm gonna call the races, commentate. I've it allowed me to do like the overlays, the graphics, and all that stuff. So that stuff that's fun to me. And then yeah, so we've been streaming that, and I went in the first one super nervous, and then got right into it, and it just kind of rolled really well. It turned out great.
I was gonna say
It's a
it was a
blast.
great stream. I gotta say, for
Yeah,
already
it was super
challenged.
fun, and yeah, it was just a great experience to do that, and I think it turned out well. And I'll be sad that like I can't do it again. I'll have to see if there's when another series, because I want to drive. Like I do
Well,
want to
yeah, we
drive,
all want to drive.
but that was good good fun. But my point there, I think, is not like getting into driving, but I think just I'd say getting into sim racing as a hobby, there's a lot of different opportunities there, like, the commentating. Maybe you want to get into broadcasting professionally. Like, this is, that could be a potential pathway. Maybe you want to get into, you know, into the auto industry or motorsports world, managing, the fleets of cars or the teams or something. There's probably a lot of avenues that could, stem off from this.
Totally.
So don't think that you have to sit in a chair behind a wheel, to be involved. I think there's a lot of potential other things that you could go after. And I think, so the question about, where is it going to go? I think it is going to keep growing. It's very cool to see the growth in it, and just how it's blown up. And the production values, I think, are just continuing. There was something I saw that, I forget who the company is, unfortunately, but they do. I think they're like the main provider of iRacing broadcasting uh, elements and add-ons and things. And there was this preview of a pre-race starting grid that had these animated cars. It was the coolest thing ever,
Yeah.
and it just these little details. But like I said, I can watch an iRacing event on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, and it's as good, if not sometimes better, than the actual series you watch on TV.
Yeah.
And so that side is super cool. Um, but otherwise, for the drivers out there, the potential drivers out there, uh, just dive in. I think is, the simple, potentially cliche advice, but get in, and yeah, just try it out, and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I would say, to the women watching, I know it can be very intimidating. Trust me, joining our league for the first time was so intimidating, but that's what we're talking about with community, is if you find a community like Init or Screen to Speed where you know that you're going to be with people who are going to advocate for you, who aren't going to bash you or anything like that. Like our league does, they teach you right from wrong. If you're somebody who's being crazy on track, you're going to get called out for it. um, Rest assured you will be called out on it, and it helps you learn, because I feel like you learn better when you're racing against people that are actually your friends. You don't want to ruin their race. You don't. It's not some
Yeah.
random person behind the screen. And yeah, it will be intimidating. My first race ever, I was shaking so hard in my rig. I don't know how your race was, but I was scared to death. My first time ever doing a coaching session, same thing. I was scared to death. Even after racing for 3 years in a set of course with our league, doing my first rookie race in iRacing, shaking all over the place, freaking out. And that's what's cool about it. Like, you're just sitting at your computer, really, with a fake wheel in your hand, but it's real. Um, and I do think that kind of what you're talking about, you really can take so much from sim racing into the real world in ways you would never expect. Like creating those animation graphics, broadcasting, even just learning. Like, I don't know very much about setup still, but what I do know, it has been helpful in my career now entering into the motorsport world, but currently working in the automotive world from the manufacturer side. Just understanding what a car chassis is and how it can
Yeah.
affect things is so valuable. And you can learn that instead of just watching YouTube videos about it. Like, you're learning it because you're using it in the sim
Hmm.
racing world. So I don't really know that there's any other sports or professions really where you can get that access and the ability to kind of do whatever you want with it. So
Right.
that's why it's the
Yeah.
best. And you get hooked too, like you said. You definitely get hooked, and
Yeah.
makes it all the better. So, Todd, thank you so much for being on my final regularly scheduled In a Talk. It has been so great having you. Always a pleasure to talk to you and hear your insight on everything. And I really look forward to our next season racing and how it goes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here to do this with you, and have a chat. And yeah, hope to maybe do another one down the road. But yes, definitely look forward to, trading some paint on
Yeah,
in the sim.
it'll be great. All right. Well, thank you, Todd, so much. Everyone watching, thanks for joining us this evening. SBR folks, thanks for hanging out with us, including everyone else. And we will catch you next time. So thank you.